Hey, so I thought I'd talk a bit about playing live with Koala. So I don't see a lot about this online really, and I think it's kind of one of the things that really attracts me to using Koala because it is something that you can just pick up, plug in it, and play in front of a proper audience. And I've done it a few times, like three, four, five times, in front of like decent sized crowds, and so far it's never completely crapped out on me and made me look like an idiot. I've done things that make me look like an idiot, but it hasn't been Koala's fault. But there are a couple of things that you need to know before you start a gig, really. You got to get set up because a lot of the things that are very obvious to you when you're playing just at home suddenly become like massive panics as soon as you get in front of people. It's just human nature, right? So I think the first thing is if you're anything like me, when you save versions of stuff, you're going to have like uh, well, the song I'm going to talk about today is called Steps. I'll have like steps one, steps two, steps three, steps four, steps five, final, step five, final, underscore, slightly louder bass, or whatever. It's going to be too confusing when you actually get there. And what I do is I call everything perform and then the name of the track. So you'll see here, right? So, dun, dun, dun. Yeah, perform steps is the name of this file. That way I know, okay, this is the version that I know I'm going to go out and perform on. The next thing is I don't like to do any kind of a lot of tracks. You're gonna pretty much build them up by having parts that come in and out, right? And you can do that by muting individual tracks or by soloing individual tracks. Let's say you've got a track that starts off with just like a bass drum. You could just solo that bass drum and then start soloing other things and bringing that in. To me, it's too fiddly, and you don't want to be trying to remember which track comes in when. It's just too much to think about. So better than that, I think, is to make sequences. The sequences are like whole chunks of like, okay, this is the first part, this is the second part. And I do it from left to right. So a track, when I'm playing it, a song, I should say, when I'm playing it, always starts for me top left of Koala. That way I know where I am, and that way I can go from left to right, knowing I'm kind of progressing through the song, if you like. Sometimes I have like a reason to go on the first row or the second row. Like there might be a slight variation where I want to go down to the second row, and that's where I'll put that. But generally, the story goes as you read a book from left to right. If you got more than four sequences, there are pages in Koala. I didn't know there was anything on there. There are pages in Koala you can step through and do up to, I don't know, 16 or so sequences. I don't think any song that you're playing live is going to be that complicated necessarily. At least that's true for me. One thing you've really got to watch though, because you're going to be stepping from one sequence to another, is when it's going to do that step, when it's going to do that change. So is it going to do it as soon as you hit that button to go from one to the other? Or is it going to wait until the end of a beat or the end of a bar or the end of the entire sequence? There's good reasons for doing all of those things, right? If you are switching between sequences where it's like a verse and then a chorus, you don't want to switch in the middle of a sequence because it's going to sound crap. Suddenly you're going to start changing chords when you didn't want to. The bass line is going to jump to a place where you didn't want it to be. It's going to be disastrous. You might want to have that as do it as the end of the sequence. So anyway, the place where you change that is in the tempo. In tempo, you can see there's a bunch of settings that aren't just the tempo. And the one we're talking about here is that sequence snap. So is it just off? Is it just going to let you switch whenever you want to? Or do you want to wait until the end of the beat, the end of the bar, or until the whole sequence is finished? So each one of my sequences here is 8 bars long. So I could just have it play through one and then the next. And in fact, I could have it autoplay. So if I really wanted to automate things, have fewer things to worry about when you're on stage, you could just set up that autoplay thing. You can have sequences that repeat. That's not a problem. So you could go verse, chorus, and then back to the verse again. You just copied it over to slot number 3. That would be fine. For this track, what I've done is turned it off. Now that's fine because I want to be able to switch from one thing to another. There's no changes in the chords that are playing. It's just elements dropping in and out. And in order to make that predictable, this is pretty important, and this has caught me out before on stage. You need to make sure that all those bars are the same length. Sorry, all those sequences are the same length. So this first one is 8 bars long. And then each one of the other sequences is also 8 bars long. If you don't do that, you can get to like bar number 6 and then jump to another sequence, and you think, great, it's just going to continue on in that progression, because it's like all the sequences are moving at the same time. So if I go from 1 to 3, it's still going to be like halfway through. It's not going to start from the beginning of sequence number 3. But it's going to jump, if I'm in up to bar number 6 or 7, and then I jump to a 4-bar loop, then it is going to go back to the beginning, and it's going to sound crap. It's going to be an obvious like car crash type mistake. So make all of the sequences the same. Another thing I've got on here is a limiter. I mentioned that before. I've labeled up here all the bus elements, rather than have it just be bus A, bus B, bus C. They actually say what they are. So the drums, the bass, the main riff, and the arpeggios. That makes it a lot easier if I'm starting to tweak the volume of things, because I can hear in the room one of them's getting too loud. Or if I think I want to put on some effects on just the drums, or I want to switch up the effects as I'm playing. Probably should have worked all that stuff out beforehand, but sometimes the mood catches you and you want to do something different. So I'm just going to go through it a bit quickly. Oh, sorry, the last thing here. You can see right at the 4th sequence, there is something below. So that 4th sequence is kind of the last thing that will play, and it's kind of all the elements playing together. But the end of the song is going to be just the main riff playing by itself for 1 bar. Now, I tried a bunch of different ways to get this to happen. I tried having a different sequence. There was just a solo bar and switching to that. I tried soloing just the riff. But if you don't, the way the song works, if you don't get it clean on that last riff, it just sounds like clumsy, and it's such a shame because it's right at the end of the song. It's very obvious. So the best way I found to do it is to have a whole sequence, which is going to be the last sequence that I play. So it just plays 7 bars normally, and then the last bar, because don't forget, some of these samples that it's playing are like an entire 8-bar loop. Like there is a set of chords like this that include the chord changes. So I have to let the whole thing play for 8 bars. So, like I say, the easiest way to do it was this way, where I've just got a special outro sequence. One more thing, a lot of the time when I'm playing stuff, it will have effects like delay effects or reverb effects on individual buses or on the whole lot. And if you finish off a song by pressing stop, like that stuff just like cuts out dead and it sounds like crap. So much better to have an empty sequence you can switch to. So when you get to the end of the song, switch to an empty sequence and then wait for the massive applause to die down and then press stop. All right. I'm going to pause here and try and play the song, and you'll be like, why was he telling us all this stuff about how to do it really well? And then that happened. Anyway, let's see. So the song's called Steps. I originally recorded it in GarageBand because I'm a professional. And I just exported like all of the different elements. So what is that? There's this keyboard riff, some pretty low drums, another drum element there, a more kind of high-pitched laser type percussive element, this thing, which is just the same thing. I should get rid of that, it's a duplicate. Chords that I mentioned earlier. And then I didn't record the bass riff, I've just recorded the one note. And then I sequenced that in Koala. Gives you a bit more freedom about what to do. Okay, let's try it. And there's a harmonica bit. like that. That was faultless. I'm sure you'll agree. Okay, cool. All right, see you later.